In this video, we're going to be exploring the water cycle. So as we can become more advanced, we can start to change our terminology a little bit. So rather than the water cycle, we can start to refer to this cycle as the hydrologic cycle. Where is our water? So most of the water on Earth, 97% of it, is salt water. And that water is going to be found in our oceans. So this water is really not potable, which means that we can't drink it safely. 3% of Earth's water is fresh water. Most of this water is frozen in the polar ice caps. Some of this water can also be found in our rivers, lakes, and streams, as well as underground. So the first process we're going to talk about is evaporation. Evaporation is driven by the sun. That is the source of energy that's driving the whole cycle. Water molecules are going to absorb energy from the sun, and those molecules, once they absorb enough energy, will change from a liquid into a gas, and the gas is called water vapor. So that's just water in a gaseous form. As more energy is added to the water, the molecules are going to start to move faster as well as move farther apart. As it's warming up, the water vapor is going to become less dense than the air around it, so it's going to start to rise up. So water can evaporate from lots of different places: the oceans, lakes, soil, a puddle, and it can even evaporate from your skin. A process very similar to evaporation is called transpiration, and this is basically evaporation, but the source of the water is in leaves of plants. I like to remember this: trees and transpiration both start with T, so it's just the process of evaporation, but it's water given off by the leaves of plants. Condensation is happening up in the atmosphere. As the water vapor rises, the air is going to become cooler because as you travel up in the troposphere, which is the lowest level of our atmosphere where all of our weather is taking place, as you travel up, it's going to start to become colder. And some of the water vapor, as it rises up, it's going to cool down. Some of it will condense and it will turn into liquid water. So now it's turned from a gas back into a liquid. The droplets that have condensed are going to start to clump together, and they're going to join up with dust particles in the atmosphere, and that's forming the clouds that we can see. So condensation is happening because the water vapor, which was warm and a gas, is going to start to cool down and form clouds back into liquid water. Eventually, the clouds are going to become too heavy and the water droplets are going to start to fall back to Earth. This is what we know as precipitation. Water can fall back to Earth in different forms. You could have liquid, which would be rain, snow, which would happen when it's colder, sleet, which is kind of a mixture of rain and snow. It's not quite cold enough for it to be all snow. And then we can have hail as well, and that's kind of like little ice cubes falling from the sky. But hail can be tiny pebble size, or it could be as big as softballs. Once the water reaches the Earth, it's going to start to flow over the surface of the Earth, and we call this runoff. So it will strike the Earth and it will start to move, and it will usually follow gravity, so it will run downhill, and it ends up flowing into lakes, rivers, streams, or oceans. So it will meet up with some body of water. As the water is running off, some of it will infiltrate into the ground. So this is when water soaks through the soil and it will eventually meet up with groundwater. So the water moves from the surface down into the soil, into the ground, and it will meet up with groundwater. So as you have time on your own, go through the PowerPoint and watch this animation and see how you can identify the different parts of the water cycle. Okay, so what stages in the water cycle are going to require solar radiation? Go ahead and pause here for a second, see if you can pick out the stages that would require solar radiation. So we have two stages that are based off of solar radiation. The first is transpiration. So this is evaporation of water from the leaves of plants. And the second is evaporation. So this would be the change in water from a liquid to a gas. So both of these, the sun's energy is going to heat up the water molecules and they'll start to spread out and eventually they will rise up. Which stages of the water cycle require water to give off heat? So that would mean that it would cool down. Go ahead again and pause here, see if you can identify this stage. So the stage that requires water to cool down is condensation. So again, we had evaporation and transpiration happen. Our water molecules warmed up and they rose up into the atmosphere as a gas. Once they get up high enough and cooled down enough, they will condense from a gas back into a liquid, and then a bunch of those droplets together will form clouds. Which parts of the water cycle are driven by the force of gravity? So remember, gravity is going to pull things down on Earth. So think about where gravity might be interacting. Go ahead and pause again. So we have a couple of places that would involve gravity. The first is precipitation, right? Gravity is going to pull the rain, snow, whatever form of precipitation it is, down to the surface of the earth. The next is runoff. So runoff will go from the highest point on wherever it lands, and it will try to travel down to a lower point. So it'd go down a stream, down a hill, or down a mountain. Infiltration is the next point. So the water will continue moving farther down into the earth. And the last is groundwater flow. So as the water is moving underground, it's going to travel as deep as it can go further. So gravity will continue to pull it further down. So again, as you have time, please come to the PowerPoint and watch these two videos that talk about the human impact on the water cycle and just kind of give you a recap on it.